So think about your web browser right now, like at this very second.
Oh, I already know where this is going.
Right. If you're anything like, the kind of person who loves falling down information rabbit holes, you probably have, 20 tabs open?
At least 20, probably more.
Exactly. You've got a YouTube tutorial on learning the guitar, paused halfway through, then a Wikipedia deep dive into like aquaculture,
Actually,
a couple of those really long form articles about AI that you totally swore you were going to finish, and maybe a recipe for something just overly complicated.
oh, you want to learn everything all at once.
Right. You want to learn everything, but instead of feeling enlightened, you look at that wall of tabs and you just feel, completely paralyzed by the sheer noise of it all.
Yeah, it's a total bottleneck of curiosity. I mean, it's the defining struggle of the modern learner, really.
Yeah.
We have access to, the sum total of human knowledge, but we just lack the internal architecture to process it without getting overwhelmed.
Completely overwhelmed.
When everything is just this flat wall of information, your brain's default response is to simply shut down.
And that paralysis is exactly what we are dismantling in today's deep dive. We're looking at a set of notes from a blog called qianmeng.org.
Yeah, this is a really fascinating source.
It is. It's written by this guy named Ang, who humbly describes himself as an old software plumber.
I love that term, software plumber.
Right. And specifically, we are starting with a post titled Notes on Haskell Programming, Part 90. Implementing paragraph parsing.
Which I admit sounds like we're about to give a really dry lecture
Yeah.
on advanced computer science.
Yeah, I know it sounds intense.
Just for context, Haskell, this functional programming language with a famously steep learning curve, and parsing, well, that's just the mechanical act of teaching a computer how to read, break down, and categorize raw text.
Right, but we are definitely not here to memorize code today.
No, absolutely not.
We're going to look at one very clever piece of logic Ang uses to sort his data. And then we're going to see how he takes that exact same programming logic and applies it to his entire life.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Because what this software plumber has actually built is, honestly, a masterclass in how to manage relentless, obsessive curiosity across a dozen different hobbies.
Without ever burning out. That's the key.
Exactly. Without burning out.
It's a phenomenal case study. Ang has essentially figured out how to write an operating system for human curiosity.
I love that way of phrasing it.
But, to understand how he does it on a macro scale, we really have to start at the micro level. We have to look at what he's actually trying to achieve in part 90 of his Haskell notes.
Right, so let's set the scene here. He's been up all night tinkering with Flogwords, which is free, Libre, and open source software.
Right.
And the specific problem he's trying to solve is that he has this massive, chaotic wall of raw text. And he needs to teach the computer to look at that text and inherently know the difference between a chapter title and a regular paragraph.
And to pull that off, he introduces this really foundational concept in programming, which is the custom data type.
Okay, break that down for us.
So in his code, he creates something he literally just calls the content data type. Because before he does this, the computer is just staring at a flat string of letters.
It just sees A, B, C, D.
Exactly. It sees the letters, but it has zero context for what those letters signify. It's all just noise.
It's the equivalent of looking at those 20 open browser tabs. It's all just stuff on a screen.
Precisely. It's just stuff. But by introducing a custom content type, Ang forces the system to explicitly label the data.
Right.
He basically writes a rule that says, hey, if the text looks like this, label it chapter text. If it looks like that, label it paragraph text.
He's taking a void of information and injecting structure into it.
Yes. Because you simply cannot manipulate or organize or even understand data until you clearly define what it is you're actually looking at.
Right. And he mentions using this specific parsing tool called megaparsec to help do the heavy lifting of sorting through all this text.
Yeah, megaparsec is the tool he uses.
But the detail in the source material that really caught my eye wasn't the tool itself. It was this highly subjective, almost aesthetic choice he makes about how the code is written.
Oh, you mean the shift in syntax?
Yes.
Oh.
So he notes that he recently updated his chapter parser, and in doing so, he deliberately reverted from what he calls the applicative star greater than style.
Okay.
He reverted from that back to the monadic do notation.
Right, which sounds like total alien languages to anyone outside of Haskell.
Completely alien. But his reasoning is entirely human. He says he went back to the do notation because it is, quote, much easier on the eyes and improves readability.
And we should really break down what that visual difference actually looks like, because it honestly explains his entire philosophy.
Yeah, let's do that.
So the applicative style that he abandoned It's a way of writing code where commands are basically strung together horizontally on a single, incredibly dense line.
Like it's just packed with symbols, right?
Yeah, it's packed with stars and greater than signs. And technically speaking, it's highly efficient for the machine.
But for a human reading it,
For a human, your brain has to burn so much cognitive energy just to decipher the syntax before it can even begin to understand what the code is doing.
it's like reading a run-on sentence that's just stuffed with mathematical equations.
Exactly. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Whereas the monadic do notation is vertical.
Okay.
It reads much more like a step-by-step recipe. Line 1, do this. Line 2, do that.
Yeah.
The logic flows downward in a way that just feels natural to the human eye.
It gives the brain resting space, and that's what I love about this.
Yeah, it really does.
Here is this highly technical software plumber working deep in the weeds of a notoriously complex language, and his primary concern is the human experience of reading the logic.
Right.
He's prioritizing his own mental comfort over showing off this dense, clever code.
And that reveals a core truth about sustainable systems, doesn't it? Whether we're talking about maintaining a code base or organizing a garage or, I don't know, managing a workout routine.
Yeah. The system has to be low friction.
Exactly. If an organizational system in your life is ugly or convoluted or just exhausting to look at, you will eventually abandon it.
Yeah, Aang knows that if his code isn't easy on the eyes, future Aang is going to absolutely hate working on it.
Totally. So he designs this low-friction environment. But, the system still has to actually perform the work of sorting the text into those content types.
Right, it still has to do the job.
And to do that, he utilizes two specific parsing functions, choice and try.
And these two functions are like the mechanical heart of his entire approach, both in his code and, as we'll see in a minute, in his actual life.
You really are.
So to visualize how these work, let's imagine you're walking down a long hallway and you're holding a massive ring of keys.
Okay, I like this analogy.
The choice function is basically you standing in front of a locked door going through that key ring. You pick a key and make a choice. Does this one fit? No. Okay, does this one fit? No. How about this one? Yes.
Right, it just runs down its list of possibilities until it finds a match that opens the door.
Exactly. The choice function in Aang's code looks at a block of text and asks, is this a chapter? No. Then, is it a paragraph? It tries the available options in a specific order.
But you're only able to confidently try all those keys because of the try function.
Yes. The try function is the safety mechanism.
Right.
Imagine you put a key into the lock, it goes halfway in, so you fully commit and try to turn it, but it jams. In a really rigid traditional system, that partial match would trigger a catastrophic error.
You'd snap the key off in the lock and the door would be ruined.
A total system crash over one wrong key. But Aang wraps his chapter parser in the try function. And what try does is give the system the ability to gracefully backtrack.
I love that phrase, graceful backtrack.
Right. If the system realizes halfway through that it made a mistake, it doesn't break the door. It safely pulls the key out, resets its position as if nothing happened, and says, okay, let's try the next key on the ring.
And that concept of graceful failure is just incredibly profound when you take it out of the context of programming.
It really is.
Aang is essentially coding a philosophy of systematic, consequence-free trial and error.
Yes.
The system is explicitly designed to go down the wrong path, recognize the error, reverse course without causing any structural damage, and seamlessly move on.
So he's built this incredibly forgiving, resilient system for processing the unknown. But honestly, what really blew my mind reading through the source material wasn't the Haskell commit itself.
Oh, the scale of the blog.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was what he is using this exact mindset to achieve outside of the code. If you look at the timestamps and the archive of this site, I mean, the scale is difficult to comprehend.
The sheer volume of his output completely shifts the context of what we are analyzing here.
Let me just walk you through the numbers real quick. Qianmeng.org dates all the way back to 2011.
Wow.
And this isn't like a sporadic journal. In both 2024 and 2025, Anne published over 730 posts a year.
That's incredible.
That breaks down to exactly 2 posts a day, every single day, without fail.
And it accelerates even further, actually.
Right.
The Haskell post we're looking at is dated March 24, 2026. If you check the 2026 archive, he has already published 249 posts this year.
By March 24th, there are only 83 days in the year up to that point, so he has ramped up to 3 posts a day.
3 a day. It's wild.
No, I have to be honest, when I first saw those numbers, my immediate reaction was just deep skepticism. I thought, there is no way a human being is actually doing this.
Oh, for sure. That's the natural reaction.
It takes me 3 days just to draft a coherent email to my accountant, you know?
Mhm.
My assumption was that this had to be automated, like an AI scraper bot just pulling Wikipedia articles or GitHub commits and dumping them into a database to generate traffic.
And that is the logical assumption in the modern internet era, right? We're so used to AI spam.
Exactly.
But the moment you actually read the text across these different posts, the automation theory falls apart completely.
True.
Because bots can summarize information rapidly, sure, but they don't document human frustration. And they certainly don't care about aesthetics.
Right, a bot doesn't care if code is easy on the eyes.
Exactly. An AI doesn't spend a paragraph complaining about how do notation feels nicer to read. That is a human craftsman stepping back to admire his workbench.
But how can one person sustain 3 detailed posts a day for years? You're telling me he doesn't experience just massive cognitive fatigue?
Well, he avoids cognitive fatigue because he is applying their exact same strict, explicit categorization from his Haskell code to his own brain's output.
Oh, the content data types.
Yes, look at the title again.
Yeah.
Notes on Haskell Programming, Part 90. The number is the dead giveaway. He isn't just screaming random thoughts into the void.
Right.
He has created a custom content data type for every single interest in his life.
So he is literally parsing his own life.
He is.
Yeah.
If you dumped 3 random thoughts a day into a flat, unstructured journal for a decade, it would be an unreadable nightmare.
It would be that giant wall of text we talked about.
Exactly. It'd be useless. Instead, every post is meticulously labeled, numbered, and iteratively linked to the one before it. The discipline is machine-like, but the content is deeply, deeply human.
And the workbench he's built is just massive, because if you're writing 2 or 3 times a day for years, you quickly run out of things to say about Haskell programming.
You definitely do.
The taxonomy of his curiosities, like the sheer breadth of the categories in his sidebar, is what makes this such a joy to read.
It's the ultimate Renaissance approach, but it's heavily serialized.
Let's look at some of these categories. So we know he codes,
Hmm.
but scroll down the sidebar and you hit notes on gardening.
Oh, the gardening notes are amazing.
He is currently on part 845.
845 distinct, sequentially numbered observations just about dirt and plants.
And the level of specificity is wild. He's logging updates on flame dwarf cultivation. He's got a whole entry titled Why Common Mustard.
Hmm?
He's troubleshooting something called leggy seedlings, and he's observing the daily progress of propagating Brazilian spinach.
It's so thorough.
And that's just the garden. Right next to it is notes on fish keeping, which is up to part 216.
Right.
He's doing deep dives into managing aggressive dominant fish, breeding ram's horn snails, and adapting this plant called water pennywort to his tanks.
He also maintains notes on dieting, which is currently at part 116.
What's he talking about in there?
Well, he's asking if eating fish is a better option, and he's exploring the chemical properties of something called icosapent.
Wow.
Yeah. He's also tracking photography up to part 233, debating the merits of mirrorless camera sensors.
And he's got numbered series on AI, Rust, Go, Erlang, home improvement, learning the guitar.
Ooh.
And under notes on exercises, he recently published a post titled Healing in a Rubber, which I can only assume refers to, like, physical therapy with a resistance band.
One would hope so, yes.
It's like cognitive cross-training. But, to play devil's advocate for a second, how does tweaking a Wi-Fi 7 router relate to growing a bougainvillea plant? On the surface, that feels like total cognitive whiplash.
I get why you'd say that, but it only feels like whiplash if you don't understand the underlying algorithm he's running.
Okay, lay it out for me.
This is where the deep dive really comes together for you, the listener. Aang is taking that exact same try-and-choice logic from the megaparsec parser we talked about.
The keyring analogy.
Exactly. And he is applying it to the natural world.
Map that out for me. How does a line of Haskell code apply to a garden?
Okay, think about those leggy seedlings he was complaining about in his gardening notes.
Right.
Leggy seedlings happen when a plant isn't getting enough light, so it stretches out, gets incredibly thin, and usually dies. Now, the garden is really just a physical wall of data.
Okay, I see.
Aang approaches it with the choice function. He chooses an environment. I will put the seedlings in this specific window with this specific watering schedule.
He tries a key in the lock.
Exactly. And a few days later, he observes the data. The seedlings are leggy, the environment failed, the key jammed. Now, if a novice gardener experiences that, they almost always view it as a total system crash.
Right.
They say, I have a black thumb, I'm terrible at this, I quit. They just shut down the whole factory.
But Aang has the try function wrapped around his gardening.
Yes. The try function allows him to gracefully backtrack. He doesn't burn the greenhouse down in frustration.
He just pulls the key out.
Right. He simply logs the failure as part A26, safely drops the failed experiment back into the archives, and makes a new choice. He moves the tray to a different window, adjusts the moisture, and writes part 827.
That reframes everything. The numbering system isn't just for organization, then.
No, not at all.
It's actually a psychological mechanism for detachment. When you number an experiment, it completely removes your ego from the result.
Exactly.
A dead plant isn't a reflection of your worth as a human being. It's just a negative output in part 826. You log the data, you backtrack, and you iterate.
It radically reduces the cognitive load. By creating a highly structured container, like labeling his fish-keeping logs from 1 to 216, he never has to wake up and think, where was I? What am I doing?
The structure holds the context for him.
Yes, freeing his mental energy entirely for observation and iteration. Deep technical expertise and broad, messy, muddy hands. Curiosity for this other. They aren't at odds with each other. They're actually powered by the exact same engine of trial and error.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway for you, the listener.
Yeah, this is the core of it.
At the start of this deep dive, we talked about that overwhelming wall of 20 open browser tabs. The desire to learn a dozen new things, but feeling paralyzed by the chaos of unstructured ambition.
Right.
If you want to pursue a life of extreme curiosity without burning out, you have to stop treating your interests as one giant flat text document.
You need to invent your own custom data types. If you want to get in shape, don't just throw going to the gym into the chaotic mix of your daily thoughts.
Make a label for.
Create a label. Call it Fitness Data Part 1.
I really love that. Let's say you decide to try the keto diet, right?
Okay.
You make it to day 3, you crack, and you just eat a whole pizza. Most people view that as a massive defining chapter in their life. The chapter where I failed at health. The system crashes.
Oh, absolutely.
But if you adopt Ang's parsing mindset, that pizza isn't a tragic chapter. It is simply a mislabeled paragraph.
It's just a paragraph of data that reads, keto does not work for my current lifestyle. You wrap it in the try function.
You gracefully backtrack.
You backtrack without self-judgment. You log it as part 1, and the next morning you start part 2 with a totally different approach.
It gives you permission to treat your entire life as an ongoing, consequence-free experiment. You can learn guitar and study AI and try to grow Brazilian spinach all at the exact same time because everything has its proper labeled place in the archive.
You are transforming the overwhelming noise of the world into a neatly organized, highly readable journal. A journal that is, above all else, easy on the eyes.
So as you go about your day, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Yeah, something to think about.
If you were to step back right now and apply Ang's parsing logic to your own life, categorizing your current hobbies, your recent failures, and your ongoing projects into a meticulously numbered system, what would your part 90 be about today?
And perhaps the more revealing question, what normal, messy, everyday paragraphs in your life are you currently letting yourself mislabel as defining chapters?
Because once you learn to parse the difference, that chaotic wall of text in front of you finally starts to make sense.